Thinking in Systems, A Primer, by Donella H. Meadows. Introduction. Have you ever seen a slinky? It's a simple toy, just a long, loose coil of metal. But in the right hands, it can do magical things. It can pour back and forth between your palms like a metallic waterfall. It can even walk itself down a flight of stairs, end over end. Imagine you're holding one now. You have it perched on your open palm, and with your other hand, you grasp it from the top. Then, you pull the bottom hand away. What happens? The slinky drops, and then bounces right back up. It yo-yos up and down, suspended from your fingers, dancing in the air. Now, if I were to ask you, what made the slinky do that? You'd probably say, well, you did. You moved your hand. And you'd be right, but only partially. Because if I did the exact same thing with the cardboard box the slinky came in, held it on my palm, grasped it from the top, and pulled my hand away, what would happen? Nothing. The box would just hang there. So let me ask again. What really made the slinky bounce? The answer, my friend, is that the bouncing came from the slinky itself. The behavior was hidden inside its structure, latent within the coils of the spring. My hand didn't create the bounce, it simply released it. This simple idea is one of the most profound lessons you will ever learn. It's the central insight of a brilliant book called Thinking in Systems, written by a woman who is part scientist, part farmer, and part modern-day prophet, Donella Meadows. She was the lead author of a world-shaking book in the 1970s called The Limits to Growth, which warned us that our planet couldn't sustain infinite expansion. She saw things others didn't. She wrote this primer, Thinking in Systems, to give the rest of us the lens to see them too. It was her life's work, distilled into a simple, powerful guide. Sadly, she passed away before it was published, but her wisdom was gathered and shared with the world, and it has since become a quiet classic, a secret handshake among those who want to understand the world on a deeper level. And that is my promise to you today. By the end of our time together, you will have gained a kind of superpower. You will begin to see the invisible structures that shape your life, your community, and your world. You'll understand why so many of our best efforts to solve problems fail, and why some of the most difficult challenges, from personal habits you can't seem to break, to global issues that feel impossible, persist year after year. More importantly, you will learn where to find the true leverage points. The places in a system where a tiny, well-placed nudge can create enormous, lasting change. You will learn not to fight the system, but to dance with it. So, let's begin our journey. Let's learn to see the slinky, not just the hand that moves it. Book summary. Most of us go through life looking at the world as a series of events. The stock market crashed. My favorite team won the championship. I caught a cold. A politician made a promise. These are the headlines of our lives. They are exciting, dramatic, and endlessly surprising. But seeing the world this way is like trying to understand the ocean by looking at a single wave. It gives you almost no power to predict what's coming next, and even less power to change the course of things. Donella Meadows invites us to look deeper. She tells us that beneath the surface of events, there are patterns of behavior. The stock market doesn't just crash, it has cycles of booms and busts. My team doesn't just win once, they're on a winning streak. I don't just get one cold, I seem to get sick every winter. This is a deeper level of understanding. Seeing patterns is better than just seeing events. But it's still not the full story. The real magic, the real power, comes from seeing the level below that, the system structure. The structure is the set of rules, the physical things, and the interconnections that are responsible for creating those patterns and those events. Just like the coiled spring of the slinky creates the bouncing, the underlying structure of a system is what causes its own behavior. This is a revolutionary idea. It means that, to a large extent, the system is the cause of its own problems. Think about that. It means political leaders don't single-handedly cause economic booms or recessions. Those ups and downs are built into the very structure of our market economy. It means a competitor rarely causes a company to lose its market share. The losing company's own policies and structure create the vulnerability that a competitor then exploits. It means the flu virus doesn't just attack you out of the blue. You create the conditions in your body for it to flourish. This can be an unsettling thought. It's so much easier to blame someone or something else. It's almost irresistible to point a finger and say, it's their fault. But blaming an outside force is like blaming your hand for the slinky's bounce. It misses the point entirely. The true power comes from understanding the system as the source of its own problems. Because if the problem is in the structure, then the solution is in restructuring it. And that is something we can do. So, what exactly is a system? It's simpler than you might think. A system is just three things. 1. Elements, the parts you can see and count. For a football team, the elements are the players, the coach, the ball, the field. For your digestive system, it's your teeth, your stomach, your intestines. 2. Interconnections, the relationships that hold the elements together. These are the rules of the game, the coach's strategy, the way the players communicate. In your body, it's the flow of food and the chemical signals that regulate digestion. Interconnections are often flows of information. They're the signals that tell different parts of the system what to do. 3. A function or purpose, this is the most important and often the least obvious part of a system. The purpose of the football team is to win games. The function of your digestive system is to nourish your body. The key here is that a system is more than just the sum of its parts. If you just have a pile of players, a ball, and a field, you don't have a football team. You just have a mess. It's the interconnections and the shared purpose that bring it to life and make it something more. And here's a secret: the most crucial part of the system is often its purpose. But you can't always know a system's purpose from what it says. A government might say its purpose is to protect the environment, but if it allocates no money or effort to that goal, then environmental protection isn't its real purpose. You deduce a system's purpose from its behavior. If a frog turns left and catches a fly, then turns right and catches a fly, its purpose isn't about turning left or right. Its purpose is catching flies. Changing the elements of a system, like swapping out the players on a team, usually has the least effect. The team is still a team. But if you change the interconnections, the rules, say, you change the rules from football to basketball, you have a completely different game. And if you change the purpose, from trying to win to trying to lose, you change the system profoundly, even if every element and rule stays the same. Once we start to see the world as a collection of these systems, we need to understand their fundamental building blocks. And it all starts with something wonderfully simple: a bathtub. Imagine a bathtub full of water. The water in the tub is what we call a stock. A stock is an accumulation of something, a quantity you can measure at any given moment. It could be water in a tub, money in a bank account, wood in a forest, or even something intangible, like your own self-confidence. A stock is the memory of the system. It tells you the history of what has happened. Now, how does the level of water in the tub change? Through flows. The water coming from the faucet is an inflow. The water going down the drain is an outflow. And with just these simple ideas, stocks, inflows, and outflows, you can understand some of the most profound truths about how the world works. The first rule of the bathtub is simple. If the inflow is greater than the outflow, the stock will rise. If the outflow is greater than the inflow, the stock will fall. If the inflow equals the outflow, the stock level will stay the same. It's in what we call a dynamic equilibrium. This seems obvious, right? But our minds have a funny quirk. We tend to focus on stocks, not flows. And when we do think about flows, we focus on inflows. We forget that you can fill a bathtub just as effectively by plugging the drain as you can by turning on the faucet. A company can increase its workforce by hiring more people, increasing the inflow, but it can also do it by reducing the number of people who quit or are fired, decreasing the outflow. A nation can get wealthier by building new factories, but it can also do so, often more cheaply, by making its existing factories last longer. We can extend the life of our oil-based economy by discovering new oil fields, but we can achieve the very same result by using less oil. It's the same principle, but one path is often ignored. Another crucial lesson from the bathtub is about momentum. You can turn the faucet on or off in an instant, but the stock, the level of water in the tub, changes slowly. Stocks act as buffers, as delays, as shock absorbers in a system. They create momentum. This is why things often take so much longer than we expect. A population can't grow overnight. A forest can't regrow in a year. An economy can't build up its infrastructure instantly, even if it has all the money in the world. And once you have a society built around cars and oil-burning furnaces, you can't switch to a new energy source overnight, even if the price of oil skyrockets. The stock of old equipment has momentum. This momentum can be frustrating, but it's also a source of stability. It gives us time to see what's happening, to experiment, and to change course if our policies aren't working. A wise person doesn't get impatient with the delays caused by stocks. They understand them and use them. Now, here is where it gets really interesting. What controls the flows? What decides how fast the faucet is running or how open the drain is? In most of the important systems in our lives, the level of the stock itself affects the flows. This is the magic ingredient, the feedback loop. A feedback loop is a closed chain of cause and effect. It's when a change in the stock feeds back to cause a change in the very flows that are filling or draining it. This is how a system begins to control itself. It's how it creates its own behavior. There are two kinds of feedback loops, and if you understand them, you'll start seeing them everywhere. The first is the balancing feedback loop. This is a stabilizing, goal-seeking loop. It's what keeps things in check. Think of your body temperature. If you get too hot, your body starts a process, sweating, to cool you down. If you get too cold, it starts a different process, shivering, to warm you up. The goal is to keep your body temperature stable, right around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. A balancing loop always tries to bring a stock to a desired level and keep it there. It opposes whatever direction of change is imposed on it. A hot cup of coffee on your desk is in a balancing loop with the room's temperature. It will gradually cool down, trying to match the temperature of the room. The bigger the difference in temperature, the faster it cools. An iced coffee will do the opposite, it will warm up. The goal is the same, to eliminate the discrepancy. This is the structure that creates stability and resistance to change. The second kind of feedback loop is the reinforcing feedback loop. This is an amplifying, self-multiplying loop. It's what creates snowball effects, vicious cycles, and virtuous circles. A reinforcing loop enhances whatever direction of change is imposed on it. The classic example is money in a bank account earning interest. The more money you have in the account, the stock, the more interest you earn the inflow. That interest is added back to your stock, which means next year, you'll earn even more interest. The more you have, the more you get. This is the engine of exponential growth. Population works the same way. The more rabbits you have, the more baby rabbits they can make. The more baby rabbits that grow up, the more parents you have to make even more baby rabbits. Reinforcing loops are found wherever a system has the ability to reproduce itself or to grow as a fraction of itself. They can be wonderful, like the spread of a great idea, or practicing an instrument and getting better, which makes you want to practice more. Or they can be terrifying, like the spread of a virus, the erosion of soil, or a runaway arms race. A reinforcing loop creates exponential growth. And our minds are notoriously bad at understanding just how explosive that can be. There's a handy rule of thumb called the rule of 70. If you want to know how long it will take for something to double, just divide the number 70 by its growth rate in percent. If your money is growing at 7% a year, it will double in about 10 years. 70 divided by 7. If the population is growing at 2% a year, it will double in 35 years. This simple math explains why a problem that seems small can suddenly become overwhelming. Now, in the real world, these loops don't exist in isolation. They are tangled together in complex patterns, all pulling on the same stalks. A single stalk, like a population, has a reinforcing loop of births making it grow, and a balancing loop of deaths making it shrink. The behavior of the population over time depends on which loop is stronger, or which loop is dominant. If the birth rate is higher than the death rate, the reinforcing loop dominates, and the population grows exponentially. If the death rate is higher, the balancing loop dominates, and the population declines. If they are equal, the loops are in balance, and the population stays stable. The really complex and surprising behaviors happen when the dominance shifts. One loop might be in control for a while, and then, as conditions change, another loop takes over. This is a key secret to understanding systems. Let's visit a few of the common system structures, like animals in a zoo, to see how these loops combine to create behaviors that we see every day. First, let's look at a system with two competing balancing loops. Think of the thermostat in your house. One balancing loop is the furnace, which works to bring the room temperature up to your desired setting. The other balancing loop is the heat leaking out of your house, which is always trying to bring the temperature down to match the cold temperature outside. These two loops are in a constant tug-of-war. On a cold day, the furnace has to run constantly just to counteract the heat that's always leaking out. The heating loop is dominant. But what if the house is poorly insulated, or the furnace is too small? On a very cold night, the outside temperature might drop so low that the cooling loop becomes stronger than the heating loop. The furnace runs full blast, but it can't keep up. The room gets cold. The dominance has shifted. This structure teaches us an important lesson. If you're trying to maintain a stock with a balancing loop, you have to account for any other loops that are draining it. If you want your room at 68 degrees, you have to set the thermostat a little higher to compensate for the constant heat loss. If you want to pay off your credit card debt, you have to pay more than just the new charges you're adding each month. You have to overcome the interest, which is constantly draining your progress. Now, let's add a simple but powerful element to our systems: a delay. Imagine a car dealership. The owner wants to keep a certain number of cars in inventory, say, enough to cover 10 days of sales. This is a simple balancing loop. When sales go up, the inventory goes down. The owner sees the discrepancy and orders more cars from the factory to bring the inventory back up. But in the real world, there are delays. First, there's a perception delay. The owner doesn't react to a single day's sales. She waits a few days to make sure it's a real trend and not just a random blip. Second, there's a response delay. She doesn't order all the cars she needs at once. She spreads the order out over a few days to be cautious. And third, there's a delivery delay. It takes time for the factory to process the order and ship the cars. With these simple, realistic delays, the system's behavior changes completely. Let's say customer demand suddenly jumps by 10%. At first, sales go up and inventory goes down. The owner waits to perceive the trend. As inventory keeps dropping, she starts to get nervous and places a bigger order. But because of the delivery delay, the cars don't arrive right away. Inventory drops even further, well below her desired level. Now she's really worried, so she places an even bigger order. Finally, the new cars start to arrive. And they keep arriving, because all those panicked orders she placed are now coming in. Suddenly, her inventory doesn't just recover, it overshoots, and she has way too many cars on the lot. Seeing this, she panics again and cuts her orders way back. But the old orders are still in the pipeline. So she orders even less. And before she knows it, inventory is too low again. The result? Oscillations. The inventory swings up and down, overshooting and undershooting the goal, all because of delays. The owner isn't stupid. She's operating in a system where she has imperfect information and her actions have a delayed effect. This is the same reason you get scalded and then frozen in a shower with a long pipe. A delay in a balancing loop almost always causes oscillation. And here's the counterintuitive part. What do you think would happen if the owner tried to fix the problem by reacting faster, by shortening her perception and response delays? The oscillations would get worse. Her faster reactions would just amplify the swings. The real solution, given the unchangeable delivery delay from the factory, is to react more slowly. To be more patient and make smaller, more gradual adjustments. This is one of the first and most humbling lessons of systems thinking. Sometimes, moving faster just gets you into trouble faster. These simple systems give us a foundation. But what happens when a system's growth starts to hit a limit? This is one of the most important archetypes, what Donella Meadows calls limits to growth. Any system that is growing exponentially, driven by a reinforcing loop, in a finite environment will eventually run into a limit. That limit will come in the form of a balancing loop that slows down the growth. Let's imagine an oil company that has discovered a huge new oil field. It has a classic reinforcing loop. The more capital it has, rigs, refineries, the more oil it can extract. The more oil it extracts, the more profit it makes. The more profit, the more it can invest in new capital. This is an engine for exponential growth. But the resource they're using, oil, is non-renewable. It's a finite stock. As they extract oil, the stock goes down. As the stock goes down, it becomes harder and more expensive to get the next barrel. The oil is deeper, or under less pressure. This creates a new balancing loop. As the resource gets depleted, the efficiency of their capital goes down, profits fall, investment slows, and eventually, the growth stops and reverses. What you see is a classic pattern of boom and bust. The company's production grows exponentially, peaks, and then collapses as the resource runs out and the costs of extraction overwhelm the profits. Now here's the kicker. What if the company discovers that the oil field is twice as big as they originally thought, or 4 times as big? It gives them more time, right? Yes, but surprisingly little. Because of the power of exponential growth, a doubling of the resource doesn't double the lifetime of the industry. It only adds a few more years before the peak and collapse. A quantity growing exponentially approaches a limit with shocking speed. The faster you grow, the harder you fall. The real choice in managing a non-renewable resource isn't if it will run out, but when. The choice is between getting very rich very fast, or getting less rich but staying in business for a much longer time. It all depends on how fast you turn that reinforcing loop of reinvestment. The dynamic is a bit different for a renewable resource, like a fish population. Here, the resource stock can regenerate itself. It has an inflow. But this inflow is also limited. A fish population can only reproduce so fast. Imagine a fishing fleet. It has the same reinforcing growth loop as the oil company. More boats, more fish caught, more profit, more investment in more boats. They are harvesting from the fish stock. As long as their harvest rate is less than the fish regeneration rate, the system can be sustainable. But if the fleet grows too large and starts harvesting fish faster than they can reproduce, the fish stock will decline. Now, several things can happen, and they all depend on how strong and fast the feedback is. In the best case, as the fish stock declines, it becomes harder to find fish. The catch per boat goes down, profits fall, and the fleet stops growing. The system finds a sustainable balance, with a smaller but stable harvest. But what if technology comes along? What if the fleet gets sonar to find the last schools of fish, or giant nets that can catch anything? This technology weakens the balancing feedback. The fishermen can keep catching fish and making a profit even as the fish population plummets. This is a recipe for disaster. The system overshoots the sustainable limit. The fleet keeps growing, the fish population crashes, and then, suddenly, the resource is gone. The industry collapses, and the fish may never recover. The technology that was supposed to make them more efficient ends up destroying them. It's a classic case of what we call high leverage, wrong direction. These stories of growth hitting limits are not just about oil and fish. They are about any growing thing in a finite world. And they lead us to some of the most common and difficult system traps. These are archetypes, or recurring structures, that produce some of the most persistent and frustrating problems we face. But once you can see the structure, you can also see the way out. One of the most famous is the tragedy of the commons. This happens when a group of people share a limited, renewable resource, like a common pasture for their cattle. Every herdsman thinks, what's the benefit to me of adding one more cow to my herd? The benefit is huge. He gets all the profit from that cow. What's the cost? The cost is a slight increase in overgrazing. But that cost is shared by everyone. So the cost to him as an individual is tiny. From a purely rational individual perspective, the only sensible thing to do is to add another cow. And another. The problem is, every single herdsman is making the exact same rational calculation. They are all locked into a system that compels them to increase their herd without limit, in a world that is limited. The result is the destruction of the pasture, and ruin for everyone. The tragedy arises from a missing feedback loop. The signal from the condition of the resource back to the decisions of the users is too weak. We see this trap everywhere. Overfishing the oceans. Polluting the atmosphere. The traffic jams that clog our cities. Each driver thinks only of the convenience of their own car, not the collective delay they are causing for everyone else. How do you escape the tragedy? There are 3 ways. 1. Educate and exhort. Appeal to people's morality. This can work in small, tight-knit communities, but it's often not enough when strangers are involved. 2. Privatize the commons. Divide the resource up, so each user feels the direct consequences of their own actions. If you overgraze your own private plot of land, only you suffer. This creates the missing feedback loop. But you can't privatize the atmosphere or the oceans. 3. Regulate the commons. This is what Garrett Hardin called mutual coercion, mutually agreed upon. This means creating rules, permits, quotas, or taxes to manage the resource. It limits individual freedom to abuse the commons, but in doing so, it protects the freedom of everyone to use it sustainably. Traffic lights, parking meters, fishing quotas, these are all ways of managing a commons. Another common trap is drift to low performance. This is the boiled frog syndrome. The story goes that if you drop a frog in boiling water, it will jump right out. But if you put it in cool water and slowly heat it up, it will sit there until it's cooked. This trap happens when we allow our standards to be influenced by past performance, especially bad performance. Imagine a company whose sales are slipping. The goal was to sell 1,000 units a month. This month, they only sold 800. Instead of working harder to get back to 1,000, management says, well, things are tough. Let's adjust our goal to 850. Now there is a new, lower goal. When performance slips again to 700, they lower the goal again. The gap between the goal and the reality is always shrinking, not because performance is improving, but because the goal is eroding. This creates a reinforcing loop heading downhill. The lower the performance, the lower the goal. The lower the goal, the less effort is put in. The less effort, the lower the performance. The system just gradually, almost imperceptibly, slides into mediocrity. We see this with eroding quality in products, declining public services, or even in our own personal goals, like a jogging program that just fades away. The way out is to keep your goals absolute, or, even better, to anchor them to the best results of the past, not the worst. Instead of letting bad performance drag your standards down, you let your best performance pull them up. This turns the vicious cycle into a virtuous one. The better I do, the higher I'll aim. Then there's the trap of escalation. This is the I'll raise you one game. It's what happens when two or more competitors are locked in a reinforcing loop, where each one's goal is not to achieve an absolute standard, but simply to be slightly ahead of the other. Arms races are the classic, terrifying example. Country A sees Country B build 100 missiles. So Country A decides it needs 110. Country B sees that, and decides it needs 120. And on it goes, an exponential spiral of spending and fear, until one or both sides collapse. Each side blames the other, but in reality, the structure of the system itself is driving the behavior. We see escalation in price wars, or companies cut prices to gain market share, forcing their competitors to cut prices even more, until no one is making any money. We see it in advertising, where ads get louder and brasher just to be noticed. We see it in negative political campaigns. The only way out of an escalation trap is to stop playing the game. One side can unilaterally disarm, hoping the other follows. Or, more commonly, both sides can negotiate a new system with balancing loops to control the competition, like an arms control treaty. A close cousin to escalation is success to the successful. This is the rich get richer trap. It happens whenever the winner of a competition is rewarded with the means to win even more easily next time. This creates a reinforcing loop that, if left unchecked, leads to the winners taking everything and the losers being eliminated. The game of Monopoly is a perfect model of this. Everyone starts out equal. But the first player to build a hotel gets a huge advantage. They collect more rent, which allows them to buy more hotels, which allows them to collect even more rent. The more you have, the more you get. The game ends with one person owning everything. In the real world, this is called the competitive exclusion principle. Two species can't survive in the exact same niche, competing for the same limited resources. One will always be slightly better at it, and over time, it will take over all the resources and drive the other to extinction. The same thing happens in markets. The company with a slight edge can reinvest its profits to become even more dominant, eventually driving its competitors out of business. This is why, without antitrust laws, nearly every industry would trend toward monopoly. This trap does its greatest damage by making the rich richer and the poor poorer. Wealthy people can afford better lawyers to avoid taxes. They can give their children better educations. They earn interest on their money, while the poor pay it. It's a powerful reinforcing loop that can create staggering inequality. The way out is to introduce balancing loops that level the playing field. Things like progressive taxes, inheritance taxes, or universal access to quality education and healthcare are all attempts to break the success to the successful cycle and give everyone a chance to play the game. Finally, we have one of the most insidious traps, shifting the burden to the intervener, or, more simply, addiction. This trap begins when there's a problem in a system, and instead of solving the root cause, we apply a quick fix that only addresses the symptom. This quick fix is the intervener. Imagine a farmer whose soil is losing its fertility. The long-term fundamental solution is to improve the health of the soil through crop rotation, composting, and other sustainable practices. But that takes time and effort. The quick fix is to apply chemical fertilizer. The fertilizer, the intervener, masks the symptom. The crop grows, and the problem seems to be solved. But the underlying problem, the poor soil, is still there. In fact, it's getting worse, because the farmer is no longer doing the things that would actually build soil health. The soil's own ability to support the crop has atrophied. So next year, the farmer needs even more fertilizer to get the same result. This creates a reinforcing loop of dependency. The more the system relies on the intervention, the weaker its own inherent ability to solve the problem becomes, which makes it need the intervention even more. This is the structure of all addiction, whether it's addiction to a substance, or a government's addiction to subsidies, or our society's addiction to cheap fossil fuels. The drug of choice seems to solve a problem in the short term, but it prevents us from addressing the real issue, and it slowly erodes our own power to function without it. Breaking an addiction is painful. It means finally confronting the real problem and going through withdrawal. The only true way out is to focus on the long-term, fundamental solution. To work on strengthening the system's own ability to take care of itself, and gradually, or sometimes not so gradually, remove the intervention. Understanding these traps is like having a map of a minefield. It helps you see the danger before you step on it. But what about navigating the world in a positive way? How do we not just avoid traps, but create better systems? This is where Donella Meadows gives us her most powerful gift, the list of leverage points. These are the places to intervene in a system, ranked in order of their power to create change. And the list is deeply counterintuitive. What we usually focus on has the least power, and what we usually ignore has the most. Let's work our way up the list, from least powerful to most powerful. At the very bottom, with the least leverage, are numbers. These are the parameters, the constants and standards. Things like subsidies, taxes, the minimum wage, or how much we spend on a government program. This is where 99% of our political debates happen. We fight endlessly over these numbers. But they rarely change the fundamental behavior of the system. Changing the players but keeping the same old system doesn't change much either. It's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. A little higher up are buffers, the size of stabilizing stocks. A large water reservoir is a bigger buffer against drought than a small one. Having a large savings account is a buffer against financial shocks. Increasing the size of a buffer can make a system more stable, but it's often expensive and slow. Next are stock and flow structures, the physical plumbing of the system. The layout of roads in a city, the design of a factory. These are hugely important, but they are very hard to change once they're in place. The leverage is in getting the design right the first time. Then we have delays. As we saw, the length of delays can have a huge effect on a system's behavior. But like physical structures, many delays are inherent in the system and can't be easily changed. A tree takes as long as it takes to grow. It's often easier to slow down the rates of change in the system so the delays don't cause so much trouble. Now we start to get to the more powerful leverage points. The strength of balancing feedback loops. These are the loops that keep a system in check. Making these loops stronger can be a powerful intervention. Think of laws that ensure prices reflect the true costs of pollution. Or Freedom of Information Acts that ensure citizens have the information they need to hold their governments accountable. These strengthen the self-correcting ability of a system. Even more powerful is the gain of reinforcing feedback loops. These are the engines of growth, explosion, and collapse. Slowing down a runaway reinforcing loop is one of the most powerful things you can do. This is why slowing population and economic growth is so critical for sustainability. It gives all the balancing loops in the system, technology, markets, adaptation, time to catch up. Similarly, weakening the success to the successful loops through things like progressive taxes is a high-leverage intervention. Higher still is the structure of information flows. Who has access to what information, and when? Simply providing a new piece of information to a part of the system that didn't have it before can change everything. Remember the Dutch houses where putting the electric meter in the front hall, where people could see it, cut electricity use by 30%? That's a new information flow. It was cheap, simple, and incredibly effective. Next up, we have the rules of the system. Incentives, punishments, and constraints. The president can only serve 2 terms. 3 strikes and you're out. Power over the rules is real power. If you want to understand the deepest malfunctions of a system, pay attention to the rules and to who has the power to change them. Even more powerful than the rules is the power of self-organization. This is the ability of a system to change itself, to evolve, to create new structures and new rules. In nature, it's called evolution. In human society, it's social revolution or technological advance. A system that can self-organize is incredibly resilient. It can survive almost any change by changing itself. Encouraging experimentation, diversity, and freedom is the way to enhance self-organization. It means letting go of control, which can be scary, but it's where true innovation and resilience are born. Now we're near the top. The second most powerful leverage point is the goal of the system. As we said, the goal is the ultimate direction setter. If you change the goal, you change the behavior of every part of the system as it realigns to serve the new goal. A company whose goal is simply to maximize quarterly profit will behave very differently from a company whose goal is to create lasting value for its customers, employees, and community. A society whose goal is to maximize GNP will produce GNP. It won't produce justice, or sustainability, or happiness, unless those are defined as the goal. So what could possibly be more powerful than the goal of the system? The most powerful leverage point of all is the paradigm, the shared set of beliefs and assumptions out of which the system arises. The paradigm is the great, unstated agreement about how the world works. Growth is good. Nature is a resource to be exploited. You can own land. These are the ideas that create our systems. The ancient Egyptians built pyramids because they shared a paradigm about the afterlife. We build skyscrapers because we share a paradigm about the value of downtown real estate. Changing a paradigm is the most powerful thing you can do to change a system. It's what Copernicus did when he showed that the Earth was not the center of the universe. It's what Einstein did when he showed that matter and energy are interchangeable. Paradigm change is difficult, because a society resists challenges to its deepest beliefs more than anything else. But it's not slow or expensive. It can happen in a millisecond. It's just a click in the mind, a new way of seeing. And that leads to the final, ultimate leverage point. Number 1 on the list. The power to transcend paradigms. This is the ability to realize that no paradigm is true. That every worldview, including your own, is just a limited model of an infinitely complex universe. It's the freedom to choose your paradigm, to not be a prisoner of any single way of seeing. It's to let go into not knowing, into what some traditions call enlightenment. This is where systems thinking ultimately leads us. It starts with a simple mechanical toy, a slinky, and it ends at the doorstep of the deepest human wisdom. It teaches us that we can't control the world. We can't predict it with perfect certainty. The illusion of control is just that, an illusion. So, if we can't control systems, what can we do? We can dance with them. Dancing with a system means getting the feel for its rhythm. It means watching how it behaves, learning its history. It means exposing your own mental models to the light of day, and being humble enough to admit when they're wrong. It means honoring and distributing information, and using language with care. It means paying attention to what is truly important, not just what is easy to measure. It means going for the good of the whole, not just one part. It means staying a learner, embracing error, and celebrating complexity. Living in a world of systems requires more than just our analytical minds. It requires our full humanity, our intuition, our compassion, our creativity, and our courage. The future can't be predicted, but it can be envisioned and brought lovingly into being. We can't impose our will on a system, but we can listen to what it tells us, and discover how its properties and our values can work together to create something far better than we could ever create alone. That is the dance. And it's a dance we are all a part of, whether we know it or not. The gift of this book is that it teaches us the steps. Commentary. So, what do we take away from all of this? For me, the most powerful lesson in thinking in systems is a profound shift in perspective. It's the shift from blaming to understanding. It's the move from seeing a world of isolated events and individual actors to seeing a world of interconnected structures and dynamic patterns. When you're stuck in traffic, your first instinct is to get angry at the driver in front of you. But systems thinking teaches you to ask a different question. What is the structure of this transportation system that produces traffic jams every single day? When you see a problem that never seems to go away, whether it's in your own life or in society, you stop looking for a villain to blame and you start looking for the feedback loops, the delays, and the eroding goals that are holding that problem in place. This shift doesn't just make you a better problem solver. It makes you a more compassionate and humble person. You start to see that people's behavior, including your own, is often a product of the system they are in. As Donella Meadows puts it, if you put good people in a bad system, you get bad results. You have to change the system. So how can you start applying this superpower in your own life, starting today? Here are a few simple things you can try. First, the next time you encounter a recurring problem, a frustration that keeps popping up, stop and ask yourself, what's the system? Instead of who's to blame, ask what is the structure here that is producing this behavior. Just asking that question can change everything. Second, try to identify one simple stock and its flows in your daily life. It could be the level of your energy. The inflow is sleep, food, and rest. The outflows are work, stress, and exercise. What feedback loops are controlling those flows? Maybe the less energy you have, the more coffee you drink, which gives you a short-term boost but leads to a crash later, creating a vicious cycle. Just seeing that loop can be the first step to changing it. And third, listen for systems language. When you hear people talking, are they stuck at the level of events? Or are they talking about patterns and structure? Start using systems words yourself. Talk about reinforcing loops, balancing loops, and delays. When you can name something, you can see it. And when you can see it, you can begin to change it. Thinking in systems is more than just a book about models and diagrams. It's a guide to a more effective and, I believe, a more graceful way of living in a complex world. It teaches you to see the big picture, to act with wisdom, and to find the courage to intervene where it matters most. That was a summary of Thinking in Systems, a primer by Donella H. Meadows. We've covered the core ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. The real magic happens when you decide to take the journey yourself. The book is filled with stories, examples, and a depth of wisdom that we've only been able to touch on. It's in the quiet moments of reading that a particular idea might click, and you'll see your own world in a completely new light. This summary is your invitation. If anything we've talked about has sparked your curiosity, I truly encourage you to pick up a copy. It's not just a book to be read, it's a lens to be looked through, one that can genuinely change the way you see everything. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to subscribe and share it with someone who might need to see the world a little differently. Each week, we dive into another life-changing book from the libraries of the world's most successful and thoughtful people. Let's keep learning and keep growing together.